Hi, everyone. I want to start out by just asking you, are we choppy or are we pretty smooth? Let us know in the chat.
And I want to start out by saying thank you for being here. It's very fun to be doing our second live broadcast. This was not actually intentional exactly. For those of you who just saw the regular Wednesday premiere, you are aware from what I said that the rain started to get so hard that my microphone started to have trouble distinguishing what was the primary vocal. And so when I went to edit, it thought that the rain was the primary thing and it edited my voice out. So it was going to be a lot of voiceover. And we thought, well, let's just try doing this live and we'll narrate it as we go along. So this will be a little different because I won't be with you in the chat, but Zeno is going to monitor and put up comments, and that way I'll hopefully be able to answer some things on the fly and talk to you that way. And also, if you have things that are not addressed, then we will. Oh, good. That's good to see, Sammy. Smooth is better. I like that. But that way, we'll have a little bit of time after the video to talk about various things that you saw, liked, didn't like, wondered about, all that kind of thing. So please do put your comments and questions in the chat as we go, and we'll try to get to the ones that we can as we're doing it.
So, anything else before we talk about some upcoming things? What's coming up this week for you?
Well, tomorrow, speaking of live stuff, we are hoping, we think, we've got, I think, about 907 subscribers to this channel. And if before noon tomorrow we get to 1,000, then we will be able to do high quality live content. And I am going back to an estate sale. It was fantastic. I will have videos next week showing the before, but they're going to be having 60% off day tomorrow, and there's still a lot of good stuff left. So hopefully we'll be able to show you that frenzy. We're going to, hopefully if we get to 1,000 subscribers before then, we'll be able to do it live by phone, and that would be great. And if we're not to that level, then we'll have to try doing it by StreamYard, and the quality won't be quite as good, but we're going to try one way or another because it's definitely something to see.
So, Beth, I see your comment there. It seemed like we may have had a bit of choppiness, some dropped frames with the stream. Just bear with us. We're still working this out. We're trying a lot of new things, and the technology is something you just have to use to figure out, basically. And the majority of this is not going to be us talking, so the words matching our mouths isn't going to matter. So
Yeah, the
hang
good
in
news is
there
we're going to
and we'll get it worked out.
Yeah, I'm going to be narrating while we look at footage from the Utica, Michigan Antique Show, because the good thing for viewers is because it rained so much, I got to look around and there was a lot more really cool stuff there than I was able to show in the video that we premiered tonight. So I'm looking forward to showing you the rest of it. What else do we need to do before we get started?
Well, basically, we're going to take questions, comments at the end. So hold off. If there's any comments that you have during the video that we're going to watch, I will try my best to make a note of those and throw them on. But it's pretty much going to be a running commentary, and we'll get to questions at the end.
But there will be some time to, we kind of slowed the footage a little, so we should have time to talk about some things. This is a fun new experiment, so we will just see how it goes and have fun.
Okay, so if everyone's ready, here we go.
All right, so yes, you can tell it was rainy, and some hardy souls came out with umbrellas early, but I decided that I was going to just look around and do some shopping and some looking. Tweety had the right attitude about the rain. The first thing that caught my eye, though, obviously some things were put away because they couldn't get wet, but these could be left out, and I thought they were really cool. They're 1930s or 40s, and they are floor height candle holders, which you'll see here in a minute. And I'm not sure if that logo on the bottom is from a consistory or some other religious organization, or if it's just a cool Art Deco design, but I could see where those could be really fun in a house that had a grand enough place to put them. Or perhaps for somebody doing bridal things, I suspect that you might end up selling that to someone who is a caterer. One theory on a rainy day is that you cover up everything that you can and you leave out the stuff that it doesn't really matter if it gets wet. And some things can handle the rain, and some things I think dealers are just ready to give up on. And I would say, honestly, these tables are a little combination of both. It does get better than this as we go along. But there are some cool things. I noticed the mirror on the ground there is kind of neat. It's a Sirocco Hollywood Regency style. There's a 30s aluminum piece. There's that baby carriage is cute from the 30s. I mean, this is sort of the stream of consciousness of what I notice when I'm walking along looking at things. A lot of this is newer and just sort of stuff to me. But it could stay outside, and so there was at least something to see here. The spools, I noticed those spools like that when they're selling as candlestick holders really well now. Now on the other side here, there are some things that I thought were kind of interesting. Ooh, that lamp took a header. There was a little bit of wind at this show too. But I really like this bike, and I want to zero in on that because I don't talk about women's bikes very often. I mainly talk about men's because men's bikes got used harder and are scarcer and more valuable. But this is a good woman's bike from the 1930s. It's an Elgin, and it was priced at $100, and I have to say even the parts on this are worth $100. The turned up handlebars, the Elgin, that front fork with the two bars. There are some pretty expensive bicycles they made in that time that use these parts. The red piece there that is the basket holder on the back is good, and I'm showing you the gears. These are what they call slip gears. Now, this wouldn't be applicable so much on this bike because it's a 1-speed, but on 3-speed bikes back then, the gears would sort of slip from gear to gear rather than being the way that we do them now. And so people look for these old parts. So bicycles, even if they're in bad shape, if they're old enough, there's going to be things worth salvaging. The fender on this is really good too. So hopefully someone will just buy it and love it the way it is or restore it, but it would be a good parts piece as well. And I also like those grates on the bottom there. Let's see. So the glasses here, you can see how much rain there's been, and it all just came that morning. Those are Tiffin, and those went along with, they made them for Franciscan wear in the 70s. Franciscan did some really cool patterns that had yellow tones like Madeira and Sundance, and these were the glasses. They did goblets and sherbets and the whole thing that went with them. And they're great quality. They're very heavy though, so they're a little bit cumbersome to ship. And then I opened this and saw that it was an F&B Wee Patsy paper doll set, and I thought, oh, they must have forgotten to put this away, so I went and hid it under their tent. The concrete pieces here, this is definitely something people are looking for now, these big old urns. Now, I'm not wild about the red and turquoise paint together, but I like the old paint on the other two. I would probably strip the one back to its original concrete color. But as heavy as these are, they do very well at shows. They're really selling to people. People want old garden stuff. They don't want shiny new necessarily. And if they want something with a little age, they're coming to antique shows, and they're paying pretty good prices. That urn there would sell in likelihood for around $150. I thought this was neat too. This is Colombian Manila rope, and this is something that came out of a 1930s vintage hardware store. If you think about Home Depot, well, they have modern versions of these that you have to ask for help with. In the old days, you just walked up and did it yourself, and you'd take your various types of rope, and then you'd put them in those things down there and turn the dial, and it would measure it and then cut it for you. Most of these are gone. They got scrapped. In the 40s during the war, there were a lot of scrap drives for metal, and in the 70s, when a lot of these old hardware stores were closing, the price of metal went up really high, especially die-cast metal in the late 70s, and people took this stuff and threw it in the scrap yards. So finding these older ones is not so easy, and prices are usually a few hundred on those. Let's see, this gal, why did I look at these? Yes, I remember. These are, everybody calls these Murano, but there's something about them that makes me think that they're probably made in Venice, not on the island of Murano. And that is, if you look at them up close, and I'll show you the bottom here a little better on one of them, I think, you'll notice that it is machine polished. Anytime you start seeing machine work on a piece, it is not made on the Isle of Murano. Murano is strictly hand blown. There is a ton of stuff in Venice being sold with Murano labels now that is not made in Murano. So it's important to get a feel for what handmade glass looks like as opposed to machine made. And you notice the quality when you look up close, lots of little specks and dots and colors where they really shouldn't be. Homer Laughlin, see the 44 on there? That is actually the year that these were made. They use date codes. A lot of the China companies did. So if you want to date a pattern, if you're not sure, you can learn the codes and know. Syracuse did it. Homer Laughlin did it. But this Mexicana line was very popular in the 1930s. People just really liked it. It was done on the Riviera blank, which was the square dishes they made for, I think it was Woolworths that commissioned them to do Riviera. And they did it in solid colors, but then they thought, well, what a great blank, we can use it for other things. And so they did these really great Mexican looking pots and the cactus and the yucca plant. I think that's a yucca in the back there. Just really vibrant and really fun. And a lot of people started collecting these in the 70s when these colors came back into style again. Oh, let's see. All right. The patio light on the left there, I'm realizing I should have bought. It was only $15, and that was Viking glass. That's a good deal. I usually get $30 for those. And then these two, they have them marked Viking, and I think that they may be, but Ellie Smith did similar. You notice there's a ring in the bottom to hold a candle. So they're not just ewers that are just for ornament. They actually are candle holders for a big tall candle. And the ruby colors were always more expensive when they were new because it cost more to make the ruby. They had to use materials that were more expensive. So they always sold for about 10% more new, and they tend to sell for more now. The Ronald Reagan teapot is very much caricature, but this was done by Hall China with the Reagan's blessing, and they are pretty collectible. $75 to $100 is about the right price nowadays. There was a time when teapot collecting was really hot that they sold for about $150. It's surprising how little Ronald Reagan stuff there really is, considering how popular he was. And then there's some nice carnival here. I just sold the Fenton pine cone at this show, the smaller bowl, for $20. So this $35 for the ruffled edge and the larger dimensions is about right. And then this one is Fenton sailboats. And you see that they have that priced at $40, which is also about the right retail price. You can tell they're covering up an old sticker because these pieces did used to sell for more. But Carnival glass seems like it's making a comeback and starting to appeal to a new generation. So I'm seeing things sell that used to sit for a long time. I think a lot of people are starting to really appreciate this again. I like these, and I've never had a set to sell. I've always liked these candles with the wrought iron from the 60s and 70s, and they kind of remind me of what was in the church that I went to when I was a kid. I don't know why. I've just never been able to find a pair I could afford. These are priced at $50, which is pretty reasonable for retail. It's not quite cheap enough for wholesale, but I've seen people sell these for as much as $75 to $100. The Francoma piece here, it doesn't have its cork stopper, but it's got the leather holder, the lanyard, which is really important. These canteens were made for years. That brick red clay at the bottom tells us that it was made in Sapulpa, which was their factory starting in about 1955. So this is probably a 1960s piece, very popular at the time, and they came in a lot of great colors too. Francoma actually made a lot of crazy colors people haven't seen before. These are Indian blue, and Art Deco was originally what John Frank, the founder of Francoma, did in terms of design. So these are early pieces. There wasn't a lot made during the war because they couldn't get the chemicals for the colors, and they were pretty broke by the end of the war. So 40s Francoma is pretty difficult to find compared to the Western pieces that we see later on. So that's a pretty nice set. And behind it, you see there's a piece of hull and a couple of pieces of hull. Okay, I wanted to show these because they're cute. They're priced at only $5 per pair for the little ones and $5 each for the large. All of these are marked Occupied Japan, and I get a lot of questions about Occupied Japan. That mark was only done from 1947 to 1952, and it was to make Americans feel good about buying this stuff because it was to remind you that we were in control. Well, the Japanese hate it, and so in the 80s, Japanese people would come over and buy this and then destroy it. We watched somebody spend $100 on it and then break every piece in the parking lot outside of one of our antique malls, which was kind of shocking. The truth is, anything from that era, from the most rudimentary, cheapy things like these to which cost about 19 cents a piece new, to wonderful, beautiful sets of fine china and noritake, all had to be made with that mark on it. So Occupied Japan could be anything and everything. But I wanted to show these because they're cute and they're fun and they're not expensive. And I wanted people to know that because a lot of people, I get called a lot on, oh, I have Occupied Japan, and that's rare, but it just isn't. Okay, let's see. So I like this because it is beer related advertising, and anything 60s, 70s. I mean, you can tell from the plastic and the way this attaches that this isn't wildly old, but this was a premium. You probably had to send in a certain number of bottle caps. And I like that fire and police. You see a lot of spotlights from cars at antique shows, but to see the cobalt blue with the fire police on it is really a lot more unusual, and 50 was pretty good on that. And then I always think of Yvonne Thrifty Rich when I see the happy faces. And on the right, you've got the pencil sharpener. And that is an older piece. It looks newer than it is. When I picked it up, it was actually made USA. And so that tells us it's got some age. And it's a little harder to find than the McCoy mugs that we see more often. The one on the left in the red and white is kind of cute, though. I think both of these, the mug was 12 and the pencil sharpener 25, I think. Popsicle stick art. I don't know what it is about this that just makes me smile every time I see it. I have a big lamp made out of it. I just bought a little box purse. This one's just a box, I think, to use on a dresser or something. We'll see here. Yeah, just really simple stuff. And they always seem to make them with marbles. I don't know if it was because it was originally a kid's camp craft and then adults started making them and that was just the style, but they always seem to combine the two and they're just fun. You know, it's kitsch. There we go. There's the purse. This is the purse that I bought because I just thought it was really neat to see it as a purse. And yes, you can tell I slowed the footage down because I really don't move this slow in real life, trust me. But this is, I thought, just really sweet. I like the embellishment of the fruit on it, and they use the fun little glass beads. They almost look like trade beads. Now, I'm sure it would be very noisy to carry this thing around with you if you had it full of stuff. I imagine that someone would just use it on a dresser and look at it and put things in it rather than carrying it around these days, but you could. And I think that was only 15. Okay, Roy Rogers, of course, King of the Cowboys. He and Hopalong were probably the most popular of the comic cowboys, I say. They were playing on TV, and the paint set is fun. And then I like this little guy next to it. I just really gravitate towards Western things. There was a shop in Seattle called Ruby Montana's Pinto Pony when I was first in the antique business back in the late 80s, early 90s, and all she did was Western kitsch, and I really developed a taste for it because of that. Campbell's Soup Kid. These decals I thought were a great price at $2 each. People would buy these and put these on very plain white metal kitchenware, or sometimes on the window, or just wherever as decorations. This was in the old days when you had to put water on a decal to release it, but only $1 for that. I thought that was pretty reasonable. They were 15 cents new, which translates to a lot more than $1 in modern times. And these were mainly from the 50s, 40s, 50s is when you see a lot of these. They had a lot of the same one, and they probably just got a good deal on a stack, so they were passing them on. But I like showing people that you can get things. Your purse is nice, but the matching shoes are another story. Yes, I imagine popsicle stick shoes would be very uncomfortable, like Dutch clogs, but worse. But I like to show people that you can get inexpensive things that you can buy for resale at an antique show. It's not all just priced for retail buyers. The red star on the left there, 25 is a pretty typical price for these. We see these in older estates because this was the thing you put in the window to indicate that you had somebody in the service in your house. Generally, it would be your son. Portholes are very popular right now. People are turning them into tables. They are using them as garden decor. It is amazing how much they're selling for. This is off an old Liberty ship. It's kind of a standard size, but it's got the screen, and that's unusual. They don't usually have the screen still. And so I thought that was pretty neat. And it says right there, oh, I'm sorry, not a Liberty ship. This was from a Great Lakes steel steamship. I forget that they had a lot of stuff going on the Great Lakes. So this one apparently was built in 1943 and decommissioned in 86, and they're asking $325. I see dealers getting that price for these days, which is astounding to me because you used to be able to get them for $100, but those days seem to be gone. And it's important that they open. If you twist those things and the flap comes down and it opens, then people seem to want that. Some people actually build these into doors as window lights or into their houses as part of the architecture. It's funny to me to see plastic signs becoming collectible. It's not just metal anymore. The advertising is such a hot category. American Pickers really sent the advertising category into a rocket ship to the moon as far as prices go. And so now people are buying wooden signs and plastic signs and even paper signs because the old metal signs are hard to get. All right, so this Tonka is really in super clean shape, and that's what was interesting to me. This is 1960s. It's got the boat, everything about it. It doesn't seem to have any chips or dings. The only thing that it's missing is its original box, and it's priced at $135. I'm noticing that some of these wheeled vehicles are coming down a little bit in price. $135 used to be a price where this thing wouldn't have been there for me to see on a Sunday at a show. Now it's kind of the right price. So if you're liking to collect those things, it's a good time. This is kind of cool. It would have been put on a little boat, or some people I would see mount these on bicycles, but they really were meant for boats because you've got the green light and the red light for port and starboard. And the ridge in the middle is so that when you're viewing it from outside the boat, it's a directional, so you don't want to see both lights because you'd be confused as to which way the boat is going. So that's the reason for the divider in the middle, and it's a very 50s rocket-shaped design. I think that was priced at $35, which I thought was reasonable for what it was. Not necessarily a reseller price, but definitely an interesting... Oh, $25, I see, yes. So really that was not a bad buy at all. I have a lot of interest in boat lights, particularly at my Florida shows, but not exclusively. These beer trays are all various, no longer produced. Well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of these old beers are being brought back, just like old sodas, but a lot of these were gone for a while, and these are all 1950s and early 60s era trays. It used to be people only wanted Prohibition and earlier, but that has changed. Because look at that great jewelry she's wearing too. That is diamond and ruby and probably from Tiffany. And it's interesting because they had a couple of really great characters, but they didn't show them. They wanted the woman's involvement on that particular tray, which is different than most. Pluto the Pup, Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse. We see a lot of late 1930s, early 1940s white cold painted Disney character ceramic shakers like this. They weren't expensive. They were just fun. The paint oftentimes is worn off, or the family bought a dishwasher and didn't realize the paint would all come off because it's not fired under the glaze. What do we have here? Okay, this is a pretty famous, this one I believe is a Griswold. Wagner, I believe, made these as well, and other companies. You see them in aluminum by the 1970s, but the old cast iron lamps here these are cake molds. You would bake a cake in this, and I'm sure it was really fun to try to get it out of there without it falling apart. But the values on these are pretty good. People like cast iron, and I typically see 3 digits on these. Usually 100 to 135 is the range that I price them, and I usually get somewhere in that price. So if you see these kicking around out there now, look for big filing marks or looseness that would indicate that it's a reproduction. You want to make sure you're getting the original thing. But if you have an original, they are a good seller. This is an opportunity to look at some nice old furniture. These dealers really had some great stuff, the type of things that you see in estates that were made around 1900 to 1910. The desk on the right there, the drop front with the mirror, is a Larkin desk. That was a soap company out of Buffalo, and you actually could buy it from your soap distributor. They were also given as premiums, I believe. I find that small pieces sell better than big ones, but the prices on these are really good. This little wash stand is actually about as expensive as the dressers, but that's because the little wash stands are an easier sell. And you see the price there of $125, which to me is quite reasonable. I have sold every one I've ever had for that or more, even in this market. Chocolate. So let's see, the chifforobe is nice. There's a drop front secretary. And then we've got, this is the Larkin desk I was mentioning to you, and it's marked Larkin. And again, they have under $200 on this. I remember when I first got in the business, we sold one of these for $500. So the prices have really come down, but the quality is good. And I am noticing after years and years of, we only want mid-century modern, I'm seeing millennials starting to look at this type of furniture because it's good quality and they can afford it. A lot of mid-century is priced out of their range now. Now this piece is English. The tile green backsplash is one clue, the reeded front as well. It's certainly not that different from American, but just enough. They tended to not build a big frame. This, on the other hand, is American with the quarter sawn oak, and you can see the rays in it. And we see some mahogany. Mahogany really is out of fashion in a lot of places right now, and the prices are cheap. And I remember when it used to be mahogany commanded a premium over oak, and now it seems to be the opposite. So if you like dark woods, this is a great time to be a buyer. This little piece here I think is interesting. It's a top-loading chest. A lot of people convert these into bars nowadays, and you see it's got the bottle storage under there, so that one actually would not be a tough conversion at all. And yes, I agree, the older pieces really do have character. Look at the piece on the bottom here, this table in the 1920s with all the legs. Those were very popular as lamp tables, and it's a neat style. Now, as a dealer, I have to say they're a little bit difficult to pack around to take to a show. You've got to be a furniture specialist like this. I like these clover top as well, and that's nice American oak. 1890, 1900 or so. Again, this is priced under 200. We used to see prices in the 300 to 400 range on these. So and Susan Jackson's mentioning that furniture is hot now. And yes, I do see in the last year with people being at home so much, all of a sudden people are sick of what they had and they want something else, and furniture is finally starting to sell well again. And that is a really nice thing to see because there's a lot of great antique furniture that was just sitting around for a long time. Another thing we see a lot of are these old stoves. I knew a guy in the 90s who lived in a 1920s apartment, and that was the stove, and it worked great. And most of them still do. They were really well made, as were these scales. Now, the big metal scales and the big metal stoves weigh a ton, so they're not necessarily fun to drag around. But if you've got the right place for them, and scales are always big with collectors. It seems like that's an area of collecting that never goes out of style. 225 is probably top end for that. I have been looking for another desk. A lot of people with being working at home more now are buying desks, and I like the size of this for a roll top. It's a really nice small size. Roll tops are a neat function because you can put that timbre top down and then you don't have to look at your work. If you're working at home, it's nice to be able to shut that off. But they can be really huge. So this one I thought was a great piece, and the price tags flipped around, but I think they had $325 on it, which I thought for this nice, easy to use size was great. Here we've got a bunch of Navajo jewelry. Somebody asked me recently what old pawn meant, and what that means is older pieces made in the Southwest that were made not necessarily just for the tourist trade, but they would take them into the pawn shops who sold to the tourists and pawn them in exchange for goods that they needed on the reservation. It was before the days of direct selling. And the old pawn, it can be very valuable, but these newer pieces, if they're signed, can be as well. I just liked the graphics of this and wanted to show it. This is lino cut. This is where they take a piece of linoleum and they cut the image out in that and then ink it, and that's how they do it. They literally cut linoleum to make these shapes, and that's why you get good color saturation, and it has a very distinctive look to it. And of course this one's very sweet with the family until you realize that the guy has died. These are treasure craft sprites, and they are in my book. I remember when I started noticing these, my grandmother had little ones in her flowers, and when I started to write the book, I found one with the mark on the bottom and realized they were treasure craft, so I bought both of those, of course. I will do a treasure craft tutorial video at some point just for fun. And then this one is Gilner. You can tell because the ears don't have the same impression, and this piece was a bargain, except it's got a chip up at the top. E.T. come home. There are collectors of E.T. and it's been long enough, so that's bound to happen. I did notice that the paper ephemera was well hidden at this show, but there was some under some of the stronger tents, which is nice. And I also noticed that little red tollware box there. Okay, here's some more treasure craft. The one in front is a wee one. That's sort of a half-size figure they came up with after the sprites took off. The one in the back is Gilner, and notice the difference in color. And so that's one way if they don't have their labels to identify. I remember when a friend of mine's mother got a clock very similar to this with the fiber optics when fiber optic was new. And boy, we thought it was tacky, and now it's collectible. The portable radio here would have used batteries. That's in really good shape, but you need batteries to test them because a lot of times they don't work, so I didn't pick that up. A student model clarinet, we see a lot of these. They are a much better deal at an antique show than in a music store. Here's a bunch of older Vaseline glass. The pattern picture is actually Victorian. A lot of these are 1930s pieces. I like to show these because a lot of Vaseline or uranium glasses people have taken to calling it, because uranium is what gives it that bright green color. There were a lot made in the 80s and 90s, and I prefer the older pieces, so I wanted to show you these because all of these are older. The heavy pictures from about 1900 in the middle there. The swirl pattern with the center-handled tray is a 1930s depression glass piece. So you can find it in pattern glass, you can find it in depression glass, and you can find it in modern glass. And then another color changing trick is this. This is Tiffin's Twilight. Heisey did it as Alexandrite, and that's what most people call it, is Alexandrite glass. It shows purple in a natural light, and it shows blue under fluorescent light. So it does have a color changing property, and there are collectors who like it for that reason as well. And it was made by a lot of different companies, including some European companies as recently as the 1980s and 90s. This one's a nice heavy piece where you really see that lavender edge to it. And if you like lavender, it's a nice deep color. And then we get into some other art glass here. Now, a lot of these pieces are Phoenix and Consolidated, which Consolidated had the molds originally, and they were trying to make glass that looked a lot like Lalique, like the Martelet, which is called Dance of the Nudes. This one is called Line 700, which is an odd name. Most of them are named for what they are. But they made really neat stuff, and the Consolidated tends to have this wash with the clear, and the Phoenix glass, they took over the molds after Consolidated went out of business, tends to be the opaque, where there's no transparency at all. The bright blue poppy vase is by Tiffin. Tiffin used to be the U.S. glass company, and they reconstituted themselves in the Depression and became Tiffin and made a lot of really beautiful things. And then the geese are other Phoenix pieces. Here's some jadeite, but this is actually Fenton's jade, and it's a little earlier than what most people think of as jadeite. Most people are familiar with Fire King from the 50s, but this is 1930s. The McCoy boots in the lamp form I really enjoy. I usually get $50 to $65 for that, more if you have a good shade. There's also some nice pottery here. I believe the two-tone pottery in the middle there is a Catalina pottery piece from California. Let's see what they have on the McCoy. $35. That was not a bad price. If it was $25, I'd have bought it because I really do have success selling these for better prices than that. But they had a lot of nice pottery in this booth. And of course, there's the Shawnee. Now, the Bankhead is more desirable. This is Winnie the Pig. She came in a lot of different color combinations, but notice the bank in the top. So the top was a bank and the bottom is a cookie jar. And I guess that meant that you had to pay if you were going to have a cookie. Maybe that's a way to keep people on a diet or to make your kids think twice about rifling through all the cookies. They were very popular in the 30s and 40s, and by the mid-50s, they completely changed their line and did away with the whimsy and did all modernism. This is Weller. This is the Baldwin Apple. This was the piece that got the guy at the pottery table at Antiques Roadshow to send me backstage, because after I kibitzed and said, oh yes, this is this and this is that, and someone brought in a piece of Baldwin Apple, and I said, oh, how nice, Baldwin Apple. And he said, wouldn't you like to go backstage? So I have a particular affinity for Weller Baldwin because that led to me becoming an appraiser. So it pays to be annoying, I guess. $95 is a pretty good price. That used to sell again for a lot more, but pottery is making a comeback. Now, we see these a lot. My mother has one from my dad, who sent one to his mother when he was stationed at Great Lakes right after World War II. And the Army flag kits, even just the empty sheaths, if you're missing the flags, it's okay because the sheaths sell too, but the flags are very collectible right now. A lot of people are using them for decorating. And any of these old World War I, World War II photos, $42, it's a pretty typical price. If you see those in estates, grab them. They're out there, and a lot of people don't know what to do with them. This is another presentation piece. If this didn't have so many scuffs, I would have bought this because I got $45 for the last one I had. It shows various, this is the U.S. Air Force, and they're showing older planes and battles from the Army days. Now there's a contrast with the Fenton on the left from the 30s, and on the right is the Fire King from the late 40s, and you see the difference in the color. Neither of these pieces are marked. The early Fire King did not have the mark on it. They did a couple of different vases, including this one, as experiments, and then decided it was a hit. The sleigh bells are really great. That's a big set there. And then I had to buy the jarts. I got a very, I can't believe I paid $50 for a set of jarts. They're selling, if they're complete like this and the box is in good shape and they've got the plugs and the hoops, they're selling for as much as $200 to $250 in good condition now if they're complete. I remember people laughed the first time I bought a set for $5 and said, oh, why would anyone want those? You know they've been banned. Well, that's why people want them. I've also gotten, every time I've put one out at a show, I've gotten to hear lots of stories about people who got injured, so apparently there was a good reason for it. These little hooked rugs are cute, and some of them are just very simple. Some of them have great patterns. People are collecting those. There's even a book about them now. These little folding deck chairs, $25 is kind of a typical price, but they are selling. People really like them again. This globe has a great stand, and it looks like it is before the Second World War because Germany is unified and Africa is divided into colonies rather than countries. And it's got a great base, so that's going to be worth somewhere up to $85 to $100 nowadays. And then lots of locks and keys, and yes, locks and keys, old ones definitely sell. Even just sort of common regular ones sell nowadays. And then this gal has a whole bunch of Tupperware. And people may forget how expensive Tupperware was when it was new. It was actually fairly costly when they had the home parties back in the 70s when all these pieces came out. And so people are collecting it again. Now, there are some chemicals they used back then that some people are afraid of. So if you don't like the BHA, BHT in plastic, then Tupperware is not for you. A lot of Pyrex. We are still seeing interest in Pyrex. I think the prices have kind of plateaued at this point. It seems like they really jumped, and it happens in a lot of collecting categories. They get super popular and the prices run up to a point where the people collecting will continue to buy, but new collectors get scared off. And I think we may be at that point with Pyrex. So something to be thoughtful of if you're a reseller. The cornflower blue is still selling very well, and the prices are still fairly low. And then Spice of Life, this is a late 70s Corel pattern that they did everything from towels and linens to every type of dish you could imagine, and that's starting to catch on too. Now, if jadeite isn't your thing, maybe delphite is. These are 1930s pieces. Delphite was a color of depression glass that was only made in certain lines. They did a lot of kitchenware in it too, and it's a really nice color. I think part of the reason that we haven't seen higher prices on this is for some reason this color of blue, it looks good in a video. It's really not easy to capture well in pictures, and so I don't think it really pops when people put things online the way it should. In person, it's a much softer and prettier color. It looks a little gray even in the video here compared to what it looks like in person. But there were a lot of really neat pieces made, and the salt shakers there, those were giveaways, I think, from Raleigh's or from one of the other Watkins Spice Company maybe had them made for their stuff. But there's a lot of the common patterns you see, like Doric and Pansy, and even the square charm plates from the 1960s are a delphite color. Dante and Beatrice, very popular 1920s set of bookends. With the painting in good condition like that, they can sell for $125 to $175 depending on where you sell. And those are things that do pop up in estate sales, and because of the painting, sometimes people don't realize that they're old, so you might find a bargain out there. There's a bunch of silver in this case, and it's interesting to me. I'm used to going to a show with silver and all of it sells right away. Now, this is a Tiffany piece here in the middle with the scenes on the edge, and that's why it's priced at $250. The scrap value wouldn't be that high. I have silver at scrap prices, and I'm surprised that at the Midwest shows it really doesn't sell even at those prices. I could take it in and scrap it for the prices I have on some of mine. I'm used to the coast where that would go immediately to the first person in the booth. So things are different in different parts of the country. The Dalmatian cookie jar here is a 1980s to 90s treasure craft, and the one on the left is a twin Winton. Don and Ross Winton were the twins that had that company. And then this is Camark. This is the iris pattern. You see it in pink. You see it in blue. It's not marked. You have to kind of know how their numbers were shaped to recognize Camark if it's not marked. But that's a pretty piece from the 30s and well priced. And then, yes, can you believe $110? And This gal had more and sold most of them. The price on the ceramic Christmas trees from the 70s is just really going up. And croquet sets are going up in value as well. This one's got a good handle and it's got good graphics on it. It's complete, it's wood, that's what they want, with the metal whisks. And if it's all there, this one from the 1960s, I think was priced at $95 or $100. And I went back later and she had sold it. So croquet, anyone? If you're a reseller, say yes. And if you're a collector, hopefully you've already got yours. I think that she had 95. Let's see. Oh, 125. I guess she took 95 for it because I asked her. This road grader, I like the grader. I hate the eBay form underneath it. We all have phones. We're all aware of eBay. I personally find it annoying when they put eBay prices because you can't tell if it's a sold item or if it's just what someone is hoping to get. 7-Up is a little harder to find than the Coca-Cola on the coolers there. And the galvanized with the labels are nice. And then I always gravitate towards this. By the way, that speckled vase is not California pottery. But the pieces you see here are Cornish ware. And this was made in England. It was very popular from, I think, about the 1930s through the 1980s. And the blue stripes are what distinguish it, but it often has a good mark. And let's see if we can get it in focus. There we go, Cornish kitchenware. It was made by the TG Green Company primarily, and very collectible. It's funny, people here really like it when they see it. And what I've noticed is that you see collections of it at shows all together, and I rarely see a piece by itself. I think a lot of people who went antiquing in England brought whole sets back. I personally like shaped mirrors. I like the 4 lobes on this, and the beveling tells us this is an 1890s piece, American. 1890 to about 1900. You see the oak rays in it. Also in this little plant stand. The big oak trees that you could cross-cut this way are pretty much all gone now, and so you don't see those in modern oak furniture. Any of these display cabinets are always worth buying if you can get them at a good price. There were lots of them because almost every store sold thread back then. This one's priced at $245, which is, I'd say, probably about right retail on that. And I just cannot see a stacking barrister bookcase without wanting to show it. This one's priced at $385. I think that's a pretty good deal. I typically get about $150 per stack, so I would price it at $450. A little bit more Pyrex. It's nice to see the complete sets. It's interesting to see how Pyrex themselves, we think everything is patterned. I have a set right now that came from the factory with a pattern bowl and a plain bowl and a pattern bowl and a plain bowl in a pattern that usually is all patterns. Egg crate, I just thought that was neat. I could see somebody using it for something. I know it's beaten to death, and that's part of what farmhouse decor is about, is you live on a farm, you're not concerned with everything being shiny and new. This double boiler, the cream and green enamelware, is something we see a lot in the 30s, and it's priced at $22. That's a pretty good price because the condition looks great. They chipped fairly easily, and you can see a little chip on the top. Now, in the 1930s and 40s, bamboo fishing poles made in America were a big deal. By the 50s, the Japanese are making fishing poles, and this is an entire fly fishing set altogether that was never used, with all the original string and lots of various flies and pretty much the whole thing everywhere. And it's priced at $100, which is pretty fair for one of those sets altogether. These are really great. They are overpriced. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat for the most part. That's why they're offering 30% off. But they're really cool. They are outboard motors. They're miniatures. They work. They were meant to be put on pond boats and model boats, and they were made to look like the real thing. Now, the Mercury is rare. It used to sell maybe for $8.95. Now at 30% off, you're looking at a price more like 500 to 600, and I think even that's a bit of a stretch. The boat in the box is neat. Office furniture, again, the last 15 months has really changed things. We used to have a devil of a time trying to sell an oak filing cabinet. Now we cannot keep them in stock. And this one it's in pretty good shape. I noticed somebody saying, oh, I hate to see the things in the wet. And granted, it's most of this stuff is under tents. Hopefully they were mindful of that. This one's priced at $585, and they are selling for that price now. I really like this. This is a wonderful stained leaded glass window from about 1895. This came out of a building in Detroit. Because Detroit's fallen on hard times, a lot of old buildings are being dismantled, and a lot of good architectural salvage is coming out of that area. Budlong pickles. Pontiac, anything that's local interest. This show is about 20 miles down the road from Pontiac, so anything Pontiac is going to be money in this area. That's why it's priced at $70, because they figure somebody local is going to be interested in that. And let's see what else they have here. A lot of embossed bottles. Embossed bottles, it really depends. Some of them are very common, but when you start getting into graphics, like the trees there, some of them are scarcer. A lot of them are pretty well known and chronicled now, because in the 70s, when bottle digging became a big deal and people were spending big money on bottles, well, everybody else figured, hey, we're going to go to whatever local dump we can find and dig up whatever we can. So we know what's scarce and what isn't now. This guy's pretty scarce. You notice he drank whatever was in this bottle, and he's thrown his crutch on the ground and is dancing a jig. I can only shudder to think what was in that stuff. I thought this was neat. We strive to excel. Early chromolithography is just really cool. This belongs to a friend of mine. I did a video ages ago now called Antique Advertising, and if you really like antique advertising, it's worth watching, because he gets really, really neat stuff, and he's very picky about condition. So all of these are just really immaculate. It's funny, in Michigan where he lives, he can find this kind of thing. I never see these sorts of things in the wild for sale. Now, these you will see a little bit more, the tobacco box labels and little labels for tobacco tins and that sort of thing, because they would make extras. And so there are some warehouse finds of some of these that will come about. But again, when you see horses typically go for a premium. There's certain categories. We see a lot of things with sewing machines and soap in early advertising. We see a lot fewer things that are more male oriented. And this is a very early puzzle, probably 1910s or so. And they're talking about the greatest animal and poultry regulators, because people are starting to be interested in pure food and drug by this time. And they're showing all the different places that they sell Pratt's food. I found these puzzles really annoying as a kid because they're not interlocking, and they're even hard to display. But you could frame one and that would work. Take one tonight. You'll feel better in the morning. Better than pills for liver ills. These are all hand mirrors. These were little pocket mirrors that were given out. When you see things with machinery, they tend to be more valuable. So the power washer here, I believe, was priced at $100. You can find some of these that are as inexpensive as $25 and $35 retail price, but the more unusual ones do sell for big money, and they're just really sweet. I think the graphics are really fun. And there you go. Pure malt whiskey makes the weak strong. Who knew? The Range Eternal, lots of stove and range advertising from that era. And the kangaroos, they just look really fun. That's an unusual one because of kangaroo motif. It's not something you see in this country often. And then this is a strange thing. This is from the 1940s approximately. I'd never seen one before, and neither had my friend, so he's demonstrating for us that it is a cigarette case. You see the Art Deco with the bubble design on it, and you press the button and it flips open. And he's going to turn it around here so we can see the back is printed hold-a-pack, but they got permission from Chesterfield to use their logo on the other side. So that's a pretty neat smoking collectible, and I think he was pricing that about $60. There's a dictaphone, the very, very early type with that tortoise shell horn. This one's going to date somewhere 1910s or 20s when dictation was a brand new idea. And there's the cylinder, much like that cylinder disc player that we saw in the other video. That's how you did it. And the great thing with the old cylinder discs is you could record your voice on them. So they immediately replaced them with vinyl records that were hard to record your voice on. But this really has all of the bells and whistles, and it's priced at $125 because it's a rather obscure area of collecting, but for a neat old machine, if you had the right place for it. Of course, the place I saw one was at the Richard Nixon Library because it had to do with Watergate. Here's the old swinging doors out of an old tavern, and it just looks like every Western show that you've ever seen, and they took as much of the gray paint off as they could to show the original wood, which I think is nice. I noticed someone earlier in the comments saying thank goodness they didn't paint everything white, and I agree. You know, painting is for furniture that's in bad shape, not furniture that's in good shape. A little bit more advertising. I thought the Dow rack might be interesting for use in a display. And with that, I think we're coming close to the end of the video footage here. Let's see. Yes, I guess that's it. So there you go. That is a video. And if I had been sitting at home doing a voiceover, I guess it would have been about like that. So it's interesting to do this live in front of you all. I had to do something because the rain really affected the sound quality. And so this has been a really fun way to do it. And now I'm just curious to know what you think and what more can I tell you?
So we do have some questions and some comments. So let's go through those. I'm going to start with the ones from the beginning. Hopefully we'll remember, or George will remember, what you were talking about. So
yeah, I saw the footage when I filmed it, and I saw the footage again tonight. So hopefully we'll remember. How can I restore a Pyrex piece? It's pretty hard to restore Pyrex that's been run through the dishwasher too many times. I have been told that you can use, you can try Mother's Mag wheel polish or some other wadding cloth, and sometimes that will take the film off and bring it back, but it may or may not work. If there's anyone else out in the chat who has ideas, who's done restoration, but those painted pieces, part of the reason they're more and more valuable now is so many of them were dishwashed to death, and there's not a whole ton you can do about it.
I do believe someone commented in the chat about how to take care of that.
Okay. I've also been told, this will sound strange, and I've tried it with mixed success on other glass where it had painting that had faded with dishwashing, that you can cut a potato open and rub that on it, and sometimes the chemical reaction from a potato will clean it, allegedly. What are the barrister stacking bookcases going for now? I still can get around 150, even as much as 200 per stack if it's a nice set. Particularly if the top stack has beveled glass or something, then those definitely are more desirable. We see a lot of them, but I have to say as a dealer, I can't get enough of them because they're just so useful. And as a show dealer, it's nice because you can fill each one like a box and then take it to the show if you wrap it. And so it doesn't take up more room in the car. What was the name of the tree, not Christmas, that's Asian-looking glass flowers? Yes. I have only known them to be called glass bonsai or glass trees, glass flowers. I'm sure that they have a name in Asia that I'm not aware of. I don't know what that is, I'm afraid. I've just heard people refer to them as sometimes they're glass and sometimes they're hard stone. They're actually little stones that are carved, and I've heard them referred to as hard stone trees. But if there's an official name in Asia, which I'm sure there is, I'm not aware of it yet.
Getting another comment here.
Sure. Plate silver trays are being used for chargers. Yes, that's true, actually. I am noticing that caterers are buying a lot of them as well and using them for catering service. In fact, most of the silver plate I sell, because I don't sell it nearly as well as I do sterling, but I occasionally get pieces, and I noticed that catering companies seem to be one of the biggest customers that I have for it. Not so many people are willing to polish in the home, but they like it if they're out in some fancy setting. And so that's where I see a lot of the demand, at least in where I sell. How many dealers were in this show? They say it's the largest outdoor-only show in Michigan because they don't have any interior pavilions at this particular one other than the one covered place I was able to duck into to record at the end of the video that I premiered on the regular channel. I think that they said they had around 120. Because it's a little deceiving because those big tents, the big ones that they set up, several dealers will be in one tent together. And so you may not have seen 120 tents, but I think they had about 120 dealers. What is a reasonable price for a miniature child sewing machine? I think it really depends on the brand and the style. I see them for as little as $45 or $50. They were made up until the 1970s and 80s that I'm aware of, and some of those late ones would be cheaper, of course. Some are even made of plastic by the time you get to the 80s. But the nice metal ones from the middle of the 20th century, I think 45 to 65 is a typical range. And then the ones from the turn of the century, again, if it's a miniature of a real machine, it's going to sell for a lot more than if it's just a cute thing that's decorated. But some of the decorations are really sweet, and the more elaborate the decoration, the better as well. And the most important thing is, does it work? Some of the old ones I see pricing more like 85 to 125. And I know you're in Canada. I'm using US dollars, so you'll have to convert.
Okay, this one I don't remember.
Oh,
what
I
she's
do.
talking about. Okay.
She means the Pluto salt and pepper shakers, and I believe they were priced at $12. And I see a lot of those Disney shakers priced between $10 and $15 from that era. Does plated silver sell? I have a very hard time selling plated silver. I sold a beverage set with a nice tray and a coffee pot and a cream and sugar. Sometimes they'll have a waste bowl and a teapot as well, but I had just the 4-piece. And it went for $100, and I have had it for 3 years, and it finally sold. Silver plate is just tough to sell. If it's a really fancy piece, if it's a really good brand, if it's really old and Victorian, if it's Meriden, some of those do better. Figural napkin rings sell well. So there's categories in silver plate that sell, but your basic trays and platters and things are just really slow because so few people are willing to polish nowadays. They'll polish sterling, but they don't want to bother with silver plate. So there's a handful of people who really love it and a whole lot of people who won't look at it. I can't tell the difference between Northwood and Fenton in Carnival glass. I have to be honest. Now, some Northwood is marked very clearly. It will have a circle on the bottom with an N and a line underneath it. If that line is touching the N, it's a reproduction. They did reproductions of Northwood in the 80s and 90s. Fenton Carnival glass until the 1950s, well, 1960s and on, was never marked. And so there's really good references on Carnival glass patterns. There's reference books if you want to go old school, which are fun to look through because you get to see all the patterns, or you can look for pattern matching online, although then you end up wading through a whole lot of pages trying to get to your pattern. So some Northwood is marked, older Fenton is not. Other than that, you really just have to look at the patterns, and you'll get a feel. I mean, they are different from each other, but again, it's really kind of just after you've seen a bunch of it, you get more of a sense without having to look. Isn't a wicked in croquet not whisk? I believe you're right about that, actually. It's funny how a lot of my nomenclature is sort of certain things that I I find that when I'm speaking off the cuff like this, I sometimes use wrong terms because they're just terms that I heard all my life or from childhood, especially when you're looking at toys or games. But I believe you're correct about that. Given the popularity of the porthole you showed, are nautical items in general popular? I've found a pretty large carved wooden masthead a few weeks ago. Mastheads, yes, absolutely. Even the newer ones that were made just as decoration are selling for pretty good prices because they're just really striking. I would say there's a dealer kitty corner from me at the Renegar show in Florida, and he sells nothing but surfboards and buoys and portholes and things like that, along with old estate coral and those sorts of things, and he makes a living doing it. So there is definitely a market. It tends to be where there's big bodies of water and there's people decorating houses, and people who have waterfront houses are willing to spend money because they could spend money on a waterfront house, so they're going to set it up. So yeah, there's definitely a good market for those. There's also a lot of things that are sort of fun and cute and kitschy, and they sell okay. I do look for it myself because I find that there is a customer. Tupperware canister sets do well. Yes, I've noticed that too. The canisters, people love them because they are such a tight seal. They don't you can't smell things inside of them. They're basically like a hermetic seal almost, and so people do really like the canisters. In addition to Pyrex, what do you think is on the way down and out? Well, I don't want to declare the death of Pyrex too soon. I think Pyrex is still pretty popular. It's just that what I'm seeing, which is I've been in the business long enough to see this before. I remember when things like Roseville Pottery just started to soar. I remember thinking Roseville was in trouble when I was working at an antique mall and someone came in and said, "Show me your pieces of Roseville." And we had 6 or 8 at the time, and we brought them to the counter, and he said, "Well, can I get a dealer discount?" And I said, "Oh, are you a dealer?" "Oh, yes." And I thought that was funny because he was paying retail minus 10% for everything. And I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Oh, yes, I'm buying every piece I can because it's just going up and up, and it's just going to keep on going up forever." Well, as soon as I hear somebody say it's going up forever, I know that that means it's probably at about the peak. I would say metal advertising signs are probably at a peak. I'm seeing things with bullet holes and rust that are pricing at $1,000 that used to price at a few hundred. Again, I'm not saying that category is going out because I don't think it is. I'm just saying I think it may have hit a peak. We're in a period where we're getting to that point. Posh came from purred out starboard home. Luggage on a ship was marked Posh, and for a fee it was moved from one side of the ship to the other for storage on the cooler side. That's very interesting. Daniel has a lot of really interesting information. I always like seeing his comments because he really knows some interesting facts that are not always things I've heard before. I had no idea about that. Let's see, Lavish Mango. Speaking of Fenton, what period are all those hand-painted fairy lights from? Those are from the 1970s, 80s, 90s. That's the last third of their production. All of that hand painting really started in the 1970s on their artware. They didn't really have people painting things before the late 60s primarily. And it's starting to be where there's connoisseurship, where people are even looking for particular artists. So that is definitely something to look for. I have a pair of large Harlequin chalk lamps my husband found at a thrift store in the 80s. Are they valuable? Yes. I think if they're in good shape, figural chalkware lamps are definitely something people still really like. It's hard to find matched pairs anymore. In fact, it's really getting to be hard to find them at all. So I would say that the last set I sold, I think I got $350 for the pair. If I don't know if what you have is similar to what I had, but they didn't last at all.
Okay, did we already answer?
We talked about Joni's. Yep.
Okay, I wasn't sure if we already answered that one.
We'll find some more here. I have a pixie from Treasure Craft. It's leaning on a fence. Now I know. Oh, well, that's cool. Yes. A lot of companies made pixies and sprites. Treasure Craft was not the first, but they were the biggest and the ones that lasted the longest. And who knows, maybe there's another book in me at some point. Love the metal Tonka toys, but they pinched little fingers and were then left out in the rain. Yes, it's true. I remember both of those things as a child. And I think that's why people, when they find really pristine ones, are very excited about them and will pay good money because they are very memorable. They were well made, but they also got trashed. I think a lot of collecting is based on, oh, I had that as a kid and I forgot I had it, or I haven't seen one in good condition in years. What's the biggest profit piece you ever found at a show or an estate sale? Well, at a show, I was at a show in Walla Walla, Washington, and there was a guy who had all these boxes. It was the last 20 minutes of the show on a Sunday. It was a 3-day show. I don't know how this piece was still there, but I found a couple of other dresser boxes I liked, and then I saw this box, and it had these funny Persian figures painted on it. And he wanted $25 each for all the boxes. He just wanted to get rid of them because it was the end of the show and he hadn't had a good show, and I didn't know really what it was, so I bought that. And I took it home, and when I got it out and looked at it, I noticed not only was it painted on the sides, it was painted under the lid, it was painted under the bottom with figures on it. And I thought, who would paint underneath the bottom? So I showed a friend of mine who knows Asian art and artifacts, and he said, oh, that would have been done for royalty or a sheik because no one else would have been able to afford that. And it was really just look how fabulous I am that I can afford to have people paint the parts you can't even see. It sold for $2,500. So, and at an estate sale, similar, I found an Edward Curtis, Aphrodite in the Clouds. He was a well-known photographer, mainly for Native American, but he went to LA and opened a studio there after the Native American period was done, and it was blue, she's beautiful, blue album in print, and that was $20 and sold for $2,500. And I didn't even know it was a photograph when I bought it because the house was so dark you couldn't see it. I just took a chance. Is there an easy way to distinguish real turquoise from the man-made? I understand that there is. The only thing I know to do is to take a magnifying glass and look up close at the surface and try to see if it seems really, really, really smooth and perfect with no variegation or speckles, then that's definitely a clue. But I understand if you're more serious about turquoise and know more, that there's other ways, and I'm not as sophisticated yet. Oh, that's very nice, Stephen. Yes, they did make pressed thistle glass, and my late aunt collected Higby glass, and she passed on recently, and everyone in the family got a piece, and that was a really nice thing to have from her. The old hand saws, most are wooden handles. How do I distinguish valuable ones? Look at the ornateness of the handle. The 19th century ones are going to tend to be a little fancier than the 20th century. And then you also want to look at the metal parts. Sometimes they have pierce work or a name etched in them. And some of them have some pretty good value. Most of what we see is all pretty much just functional. Do 70s ceramic trees without light have much value? They are not as popular as the ones with light, no. But they will still sell because people are just crazy about that look right now. But no, they want the lights. Those are the ones that go for big money. And let's see if we have any more. It's
We do.
Oh, good. Well, it's a great group. I'm glad that you're all enthused and have questions to ask. It's fun to be in this format where I can answer them. Hi, Debbie. You have a waterfall bedroom set. What do those usually sell for? That is one of those what part of the country I'm in questions. Where you are in Chicago, I think you have a chance to get better money. They used to sell for more than they do now, and it really depends how elaborate they are. If you saw the video I premiered, you saw some pieces that were not strictly waterfall, but had the look that were selling for only about $250 to $300 per piece. Really elaborate set might go for $1,200 to $1,500, especially if it was made by a good maker. But in Kentucky and along the Ohio River, they had a huge flood in 1937. Everyone had to replace all their furniture, and all of them bought waterfall bedroom sets. And you can buy a waterfall dresser for $50 to $100 in Kentucky almost any day of the week. So again, it really just depends on where you are. It's always supply and demand.
Yes. Different things, different places. Okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting how that variation has remained even with eBay. It may be the prices are known everywhere, but the interest is different everywhere. I'm starting to like those green treasure craft sprites. Yes, I remember when that happened to me too. It was at first a nostalgia thing because Grandma had them. In fact, I will tell you a dirty little secret. I started collecting treasure craft before I really liked treasure craft because I was thrifting and going to thrift stores and you would see it and I just thought, well, it's orange, it's big, I kind of remember it, maybe someone else will like this someday. Then I went to a thrift store in Vancouver, BC, and I saw the drummer boy and the hula girl and I was hooked, and that's what started me really appreciating treasure craft and becoming a collector and then eventually writing a book. So it's funny how as you go on through life, tastes change, or you've just seen a lot of one thing and you want to see something else, and things become beguiling. The hooked rugs look woven to me. They were woven. I misspoke when I said hooked. You're right. A hooked rug is a different thing. It looks more like a poodle coat when you do it. But the woven ones are becoming popular too if the colors are good, because so many of them were just used to death. So to find them with good colors and not a lot of grunge is not so easy.
So I'm going to take this one. Yes, I knew it was a sense of area. I just wasn't going to correct him.
Yeah, he is the plant guy, and he can tell you all the nerd names in Latin and everything, and I nod appreciatively and get to look at pretty flowers.
I don't know everything.
Well, neither do I, but you know a lot. Artist home estate sale this weekend. What should I look for? Local artist. Okay, the first thing is that artist listed? Meaning, is there a secondary market that you can find? Are people selling this artist's work already on the secondary market? If so, then you can look at the prices that they're getting and figure at half that price or less, you're getting a good deal. And if that's the case, I always figure that you want to try to... With art, I tend to like the thing that it's not typical of an artist because it's interesting to me, and that is absolutely not the way you're supposed to buy art. You're supposed to buy the thing that they're known for and buy it over and over and over because that's what people want. So if that local artist has a following and you know what they were mainly known for, buy those things. Now, having said that, I have to say with art, I do not have a fine arts degree, and because of that, because I don't have the training to tell me otherwise, I have sort of a simpleton view of art, which is you should buy what you like. And who cares whether it's famous, not famous? If you like it and you enjoy it, that's the reason to buy art, in my opinion. Do you ever buy or sell directly from foreign countries? What has been your experience? I've had a few people since I started the channel offer to source for me in different places, and there are some interesting things and some interesting people who get good stuff. We haven't been able to figure out how to deal with shipping and customs. It's almost a situation where I'd have to have them amass things and then actually go to Europe or wherever to pick them up and deal with that part of it, because it's the concept is great. I've got an Instagram follower in Belgium who goes to the flea markets, and he gets amazing things at cheap prices, but they're not cheap once you put value added tax and customs and shipping in. It doesn't make sense. Sarah's question, please. Weirdest items sold. Well, I would say, well, I've sold a human skull. That was an interesting experience. I didn't know it was legal to do that until after I found it in an estate sale, and we all agreed that we did not want that grinning at the people coming to the estate sale, so we paid the estate and then took it and sold it privately. Gosh, I mean, a lot of weird things. At some point, there'll be an interview or some sort of a thing where I talk story, and I can probably tell you lots of weird things I've come across, but that one jumps to mind. Is a Scotty dog cookie jar made in Mexico worth anything? Okay, well, here's the thing from the guy who wrote the book on treasure craft. The employees and the former owners who had sold to Fallsgraf were horrified when they started making things in Mexico. And the first shipments that came in, because they were still distributing from the US, were horrible quality. And the Mexican production only lasted about a year and a half, and then they sent it all to China. Fallsgraf swore they would never do that, and then they did it the moment that they could. It was just terrible. But anyway, the thing is that now all of it is out of production. So is it legitimately collectible? Yes. Is it worth anything? It's worth less than an American example if they made the same piece in America, but there are some pieces they only made in Mexico. So I'd have to see the piece to know for sure. Oh, I have a Lucite new old stock toilet seat with fishing lures, and I couldn't sell it. Well, I love those, Susan. I was on Thrift Battle with the Niche Lady and on Primetime Treasure Hunters channel, and the Lucite toilet seat was what won me the battle. So I do see them sell 100 to 150 as possible, but it's got to have everything. It's got to, and new old stock makes a difference. Hey, Larry, good to see you. I found a Stickley Brothers shelf unit with rattan side inserts. Would it be worth having it replaced? I would say yes if it's Stickley Brothers. I know you, and I know you know your old stuff, so it probably is an old piece. I know that there's newer Stickley Brothers stuff that's sort of a remake, but I don't think they did anything with rattan side inserts. So I think you have an old piece, and if it's something that you want to keep or for resale, it probably has to be fixed to get top dollar. Hey, Rosie, good to see you. How often after you buy something do you find a chip, hairline, or it doesn't work? Happens to me too much. Yes. The estate sale that we're planning to go live from tomorrow, when I was there last week, I was very excited because Tio Fane mentioned that he was looking for the McCoy rustic teapot, and I saw one and the price was right and I grabbed it. And when I got it home, I noticed that the under the lid was completely broken and glued back together, which is sad for both of us. But you know, when it's an estate sale, it is all sales final, so you have to check your stuff. And I bought an entire table full, so I didn't check everything. I try to be careful. You know, mistakes happen. One thing I will tell all of you is if you're looking for chips on the edge of something, use the palm of your hand. Oops, sorry. Use the palm of your hand, not your fingertips. Your fingertips get calloused and you'll miss little flea bites and chips. But if you use the palm of your hand, you will feel anything like that. The only blue I can recall are cyanotypes, blue albumin. Yeah, blue albumin print was something popular in the 1910s. And if you look it up, you'll see what it looks like. It does look a lot like a cyanotype, and it may even be very closely related. I can't recall what the difference, if any, is. I think cyanotypes are later in time, but I might be wrong about that.
Let's see. We've got a few more here.
Cool.
Let me get to them.
This is fun. I'm going to have a sip of water because this is actually a lot of talking. What would you say the top 3 growing trends for, and what should resellers be looking for when we're out in the wild? Every generation develops nostalgia for the things that they had when they were kids. That's why video games are selling well now. Things from the 80s are definitely one of the top 3 growing trends, in my opinion, because that is our next generation of collectors. And some of them have money. Some of those people went right into $100,000 plus computer jobs. So the idea that young people don't have money, not true. Not necessarily. So I think that's a trend. I would say that another growing trend that I'm looking for are, as time goes on and more things are gone, I look for things from places that are no longer there. And that could be a famous building that was torn down. In Seattle, there was a great old ferry boat called the Collectibles, made in the 1930s. It got scrapped recently. Anything related to that is collectible. And then the third area that I would say is a growing trend is, if I had to say off the top of my head, I would say I'm noticing more interest in things that are handmade and primitive. And I think because there's been such an interest in farmhouse decor, but so much of the farmhouse decor is straight off a boat from China, like all those signs that say laundry that you see in every single antique mall. I think people who are a little more sophisticated and like that look are starting to look for primitives and things that are handmade and have a folk appeal to them that are real, because there's a whole lot of fakery going on. And I guess the last thing I'd say about trends is look at your decorator magazines, look at Southern Living, look at Martha Stewart, look at, whoever you see as being an influencer in your area. And it might even be an online influencer. The new trends translate to collecting trends. The color pink is starting to be popular in decorating again. Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate it too. I'm so glad that I get to do this with you. And this was, again, it was sort of, I'm so glad we've got this new channel, because all of a sudden we were able to do something that otherwise it would have been, oh boy, well, I guess I'll put that footage together for a future video sometime when I get to it. And instead we got to show it tonight. So this is great. Gina, I will be in St. Pete. I'm doing an appraisal fair. Unfortunately, it's at a big senior center, and I think they've sold it out to the family and people who live there. But it might be that you're able to come. But I will be around Vintage Modern St. Pete, and Andrea and friends as well, working on my spaces sometime during the week. So I would enjoy meeting you very much. It's really fun. I at this last show, the one in Utica, I think I met maybe a dozen viewers who I hadn't met before, and it's just so fun to share what we share here in the real world. How much does the space cost to sell at the show? This outdoor shows are typically a lot less expensive than indoor, but there's a reason. It might rain. You might not get a lot of customers. I think I did 80% of my business on Saturday and 20% on Sunday. And I was pleased that we did even that well. It did finally lighten up and some people came. The show that I did there, I believe it was $115 for a ginormous space. Indoor shows typically start around $150 and up, depending on the venue, and it depends on the part of the country. If you're in a really high-end antique show, you can spend $350 to $500 on a booth, and if you're at the National Antique Show in Miami, I believe the booths are in the thousands of dollars range. Do you have one shopping experience that sticks out? Your favorite place to shop? You know, Sarah, there's probably a favorite one in each part of the country I go, and it's hard to say. I think, like a lot of resellers, the last one is the one that you remember. That's why I'm going back to this estate sale tomorrow, because I did really well, and a lot of what I bought sold immediately at the antique show in Burlington, Kentucky this last weekend. So I'm going back for more. So that's probably a question that the answer changes to constantly. Pink is returning because everyone has gray walls now. Yep, that's right. It's a repeat of the 50s. That is indeed true. Colors come back. In the 30s, oranges and greens were popular. In the 70s, oranges and greens were popular. In the 90s, oranges and greens were popular. Pink and maroon was popular in the late 40s and the 50s. It was popular in the 80s, and it's coming back now. You know, part of it is that, again, people like Teofane saying, I'm starting to like sprites. People get tired of things. They want something fresh, especially Americans. We tend to change our decor more than most places. So a lot of young resellers seem to have no idea how things are made. How important do you think that knowledge is? Part of the reason I started this channel is because I wanted resellers and collectors both to understand that, yeah, it's great you paid $1 and sold it for 10, but why? Why does somebody care? Why does somebody want that thing? Why are you making this sale? To me, it was frankly kind of dull to watch people just talk about, I bought it for this and I can sell it for that. Well, okay, but who cares? Why? What makes it interesting? So the way things are made, where they came from, I personally think it's important, and I like to impart that. And I'm noticing younger people starting to go, oh, okay, that's really cool. One thing that younger people, we have to remember, us older people, is we grew up in a time when things were made in this country. So your dad maybe worked at a place and you knew a little bit about why things came to be. Younger people, everything is imported. They haven't been to a factory tour. Their dad works behind a desk. They don't know how things are made or where they came from, and we assume that they know what we know. So I think part of it as older people is to talk about why these things are interesting and meaningful to us and share that with them, rather than assuming that, oh, well, they're just dumb because they don't know. Because how would they? So appreciate you guys in this format. Well, thank you. I'm really enjoying it. It's great. It's, this is the second episode on this channel, and I love doing the other channel because it's easier to study things a little more and not call wickets whisks and vice versa and those sorts of things, and not know what a Sansalviera is, which I think I just mispronounced. So, but on the other hand, the live is great because I get to respond while it's on your mind to the things that are on your mind. So I'm enjoying it a lot. Arnell Ceramics. I've seen Arnell and I think that they're really cute. I don't know a lot about that company. I think that they appeared around the same time as Andrea by Sadek and some of those other companies of that era. And I think it was part of a wave of better quality decorative items that were coming in from other places, but I don't really know a lot about the company. Thanks for calling us older people. Well, I'm one of them too, so I have to own that. I don't know how it happened. I swear yesterday I wasn't. Do you ever do shows in the New England? Oh, hi, Nesting Haven. It's good to see you. I am ashamed to say I have not been to Brimfield, and I don't know that I can get there in September either, but that is on my list of need to go, need to shop, need to sell there. I was invited to Madison Bookville in New York, which is in a few weeks, by a viewer up there, and I'd really like to do that, but that show lasts for a week, and I don't have an entire week that I can spend right now at a show. That's a long show for me. I don't think I've ever done a show that lasted more than 4 days, and that seemed like a long show. So eventually I do hope to do things in the Northeast and New England because there's wonderful stuff there. And For those of you who aren't from New England, surprisingly enough, it is a good place to buy. I always had this impression of, oh, they love antiques because everything's old, so everything's going to cost a fortune, and that is not true. I'm a young reseller, kind of. I love watching how glass is made on YouTube, and I watch this channel, and I'm so glad you do. And I think it's great that you seek out some of those other things. Glass blowing is really fun to watch, and even production glass is interesting. I don't know. I'm a wonk, I admit it. I like factory tours. I like seeing how things are made. I wouldn't necessarily want to work in a factory like that after seeing the process, but to go as a tourist and understand how this thing that you take for granted came to be, I think is pretty cool. Plus, it makes you appreciate the people who did that. Part of what I like about all this old stuff, besides the fact that, I'd rather sell old stuff than bring more new stuff in when we have plenty of old stuff to go around, is that, it just is, it's a connection to these people who spent a great part of their life making these things so that we can enjoy them now. I want to go to Brimfield in September. Yeah, me too. It's huge. It's one of the biggest shows in the country and definitely one of the most established and best known.
Yeah, Elsie, have you been there before? You can let us know in the chat.
My mother made a point of telling me why she bought the things she did. When I watch your show and a few others, I remember her. Oh, that's great. And I keep trying to encourage people to share their things with their kids. I had another person tell me, oh, I got rid of the family china because it scared me. And I said, oh, well, why is that? Well, my grandmother, every time, or I think it was an aunt or somebody, every time we'd want to use it or put it on the table, she'd scream at us, be careful, be careful. Oh, if you break that, it's lots of money. Well, now they're not lots of money because everyone's afraid of them and they don't want them anymore. And that's a sad thing to have happen. So if you want your kids and your grandkids to appreciate your stuff, engage them with it a little bit. Put it out on the table. Let them use it. Have a tea party with your granddaughter with the tea set. If she breaks something, you can replace it. I mean, we all know where to go online to find stuff. There's very little, at least in terms of production era collectibles, that cannot be replaced.
That looks like it's the end of the questions that I saw.
Oh, well, that's great. If anyone else has anything else or just something you want to mention in the chat before we go, that would be great. And guess I'll mention quickly that I will be in Florida next week, and I am doing an appraisal fair, and we'll be working at some of my mall spaces there. And the week after that, I'll be in Washington State doing an appraisal fair in Centralia, Washington on August 7th and 8th. So if you're in that part of the country, I would love to see you there. And then I'll be back in the Midwest for more shows. I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing in August, but I suspect maybe Burlington, Kentucky again over Labor Day. I'm debating between a few, but I'm leaning towards Fleur de Flis in Louisville, Kentucky, and or the Tri-State Antique Market in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, which is outside of Cincinnati. So I'll be around. And then September, we've got the big antique show in Springfield, Ohio, which is one of the biggest antique centers in the country, and there'll be a lot of people coming to that. So,
and you have your back on the main channel next week. We're going to have the level 2 early access for members, and George is working on that tonight.
Yeah, there's some fun stuff that I put aside, including one thing that was in the premiere video that I didn't voice over. So when there was a big blank and I didn't talk about it, well, you'll get to hear about it then. So one way or another, we'll get that information out. But anyway, lots to look forward to. There always is in this business. It's so much fun, and it's so much fun having all of you. And I really enjoy the discourse and getting to engage and talk to you this way. I'm feeling really good about the live here. If you're not subscribed, please do, because like we say, if we get 1,000 subscribers, then things get a lot easier and the quality of the live remotes will be better because we'll have access to other ways to do it at that point. So And we're pretty close. I know we were over 900 when we started. So anyway, thank you all very much for joining me. I know between the premiere and this, it was kind of a long evening, but it was a fun evening, and I really had a good time with you all. And I will see you again next Monday for on our regular channel for the next premiere.
So thank you all for joining, and we will see you soon live.
That's right.
Take care.
Bye-bye now.